Welcome back to my channel. My name's Angela and we're having pizza for dinner tonight. I decided I was going to try making a sourdough pizza crust. My starter is definitely bubbly and active, so I'm going to put 100 grams of my starter into this bowl. When I first was looking at recipes, I figured this one looked good, had minimal ingredients. I didn't really know what 100 grams of starter looked like, however, and I had other things planned with my starter today, but after I had put 100 grams into this bowl, it was quite a bit, and so that's the only thing I ended up doing with my starter on that day. And because it is a lot, if you are somebody who is not a huge fan of sourdough, this definitely would be a recipe you might want to skip on. It most definitely has that tang that comes with sourdough. I think the crust was really good. My husband really enjoyed it as well. I will try some other recipes though, just so I can kind of compare and contrast. We're going to add 350 grams of warm water. When I'm doing my sourdough recipes, I do add my water or any liquid plus the starter, and I kind of give those a mix together before I move on to my dry ingredients, unless of course my recipe states to do otherwise. Helps to make sure everything stays mixed without any lumps later on as you're trying to get everything mixed together, because depending on what it is you're making, sometimes sourdough can be a very rough and shaggy dough in the beginning, and you're not really kneading the dough for some stuff, so you can't really plan on working out some of those lumps later on. We're going to add 500 grams of bread flour. I'm using a pizza flour, and if I didn't have that pizza flour, honestly, I would just use all-purpose flour. I usually don't use bread flour. I don't find it necessary. I'm sure die-hard bakers would disagree with me, but for just the home style baking that I do, I generally skip bread flour purchases. And then we're going to add 10 grams of salt. Again, going back to the salt, as I've said in other sourdough recipes, if you only have the iodized salt, you might want to start testing recipes using a little bit less than what is stated in the recipe, because iodized salt tends to be a little bit more flavorful, and 10 grams might be too much depending on the type of salt that it is. We're going to get this all mixed together using the Swedish dough hook, and it's definitely going to be a shaggy dough in the beginning. It's going to look very lumpy, and we are going to work with that dough for 10 to 15 minutes doing just some very light, I wouldn't really call them a stretch and pull, but you are kind of working the dough in a circular motion, kind of like kneading, but not really doing the full movement of what kneading would look like. We're kind of just trying to manipulate that dough and get some of that gluten worked. It's a very sticky dough, so keep some water on the side so that way you can keep getting your hands wet to help a little bit with that stickiness. 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to work that dough, and then you're going to cover it and let it rest for a half an hour at room temperature. This dough you will want to start in the morning because we have the half-hour rest time. Then we have 2 hours of stretch and folds with 30-minute rest breaks in between. And then we have the bulk fermentation anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. So you can start it the day before. Once your stretch and folds are over, you can put the bread in the fridge and come back for the following day. That is also okay. Otherwise, if you want it the same day, you will have to make sure you're planning ahead and start it in the morning. Getting your stretch and folds started, your dough will still kind of look a little rough. It's going to look lumpy. It's going to look like kind of shaggy, like it might start to tear. It shouldn't, but it might look like it's going to. By the time you start getting to your third and fourth stretch and fold, you're going to start to see that your dough starts to look smoother. It looks more elastic. Your stretches will probably get more stretchier, and it's going to carry a little bit of a glossier appearance to your dough. And that's how you know between your rest periods and your stretch and folds that your dough is responding appropriately. In between each of those stretch and folds, when it's resting, just make sure you give the bowl a good cover. You don't want to risk having your dough dry out. Sourdoughs tend to be a hydrated kind of a dough, so you really don't want to risk drying anything out. Each time I bring you back, I want you to pay attention to how much that dough is filling up the space into that bowl. This last stretch and fold coming up here pretty soon, you're going to see it looks like it pretty much fills out the entire bowl, and it's getting larger and larger. The active levain naturally occurring within your sourdough is causing that, and it's getting activated more and more that we do the stretch and folds. So you definitely want to pay attention and see that that is happening. You want the same type of results. So set a timer. I write down my stretch and folds, and every time I complete a stretch and fold, I will mark it off. I say this probably every time we do sourdough recipe together, but if I don't do that, I'm going to forget. So I just highly recommend. So you can see how that dough is completely filled out, and look how stretchy that is compared to the first stretch and fold that we did. So this dough was very easy to work with. I really highly recommend it. Now, I forgot to mention while we were putting the ingredients in, I am going to put the recipe link down below where I got my recipe from. It's a Pinterest recipe, so I will link that for you. It's a very minimal kind of recipe, so I don't know how I forgot to add it, but I did forget to add 30 grams of oil. The recipe suggests adding extra virgin olive oil. I wouldn't have done that. I'd have just added plain pure olive oil. Extra virgin carries a distinct flavor. You might want that in your pizza, and that's perfectly fine. I would have subbed for just pure olive oil plus extra virgin. It's pretty expensive right now, and I mean really so is the pure olive oil, but I have, that's what I had on hand, and that's what I would likely have used. So definitely don't forget that when you make the dough. I'll be honest, I didn't know I forgot it until I edited this video. My crust came out really good, so I didn't have any complaints. We made this particular one pretty thin. We've made it again since then, and I made it a little bit thicker. I didn't cut it in half, and it was very enjoyable. So I hope you give this one a try. It's easy as long as you plan for the time to make it. I'll see you the next time I'm in my kitchen. Thanks for watching.